water there.
There may be. Yeah. Good.
Stop it. Enough. Enough. Enough.
What do you want now?
Okay. Stop it.
There we go. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Chasing Lullabies. It's really lovely to see you all here this evening. And we have a really interesting, quite visual session this evening. So there's probably going to be a bit less text tonight and a bit more in the way of visual engagement with the material. And some of you might have heard some of these ideas before, but I'm going to try to piece together a bunch of different ideas around the topic, and it's going to be really, really interesting. So look, let's just dive straight in, because we are now at a juncture in the Torah where the children of Israel have made quite a transition. So they've gone through Egypt, they've received the 10 Commandments, and the next thing for them to do is to build a shul. Now, some of you held up my article on the JC this week, which was all about reimagining shul and thinking about doing shul differently. And it's sort of apropos, I don't think Simon Rocker had this in mind, but apropos on that parasha dealing with the creation of the first ever shul, the creation of the tabernacle, this space in the desert that is going to hold us in terms of worship for the next however many years. It's going to travel with us throughout the desert. It's going to travel with us into the promised land. It's going to rest in different places in the land of Israel, finally sort of ending up in Shiloh for many, many years. And if you go to Shiloh in Israel, you can still find fragments of pottery and different things that the Jewish people took to that place in order to transport their sacrifices there. So it's a really interesting visit if anyone wants to do such a thing. So and then ultimately that is replaced with the permanent sanctuary, the permanent shul, which is the place of the temple in Jerusalem. And that's where the ultimate big shul is, and then that was destroyed, and we are waiting for it to be to come back. But in the meantime, we have our small shuls, our mikdash ma'at, our small sanctuaries, which are our shuls in our communities. And these are the houses of God that we create, and that's what Jews do. Jews go somewhere, they build a place, they create a community, and they build a shul. That's what we do. So it's sort of interesting that is the next stage of our development. We have the Torah, we build a shul. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to look at the layout of the shul, to look at the layout of the original tabernacle, and just to wonder certain things about it, to think about the different items that are there and how they all look, and how maybe that thing that they are looking at, that thing that they are demonstrating to us might be quite indicative of something about the essence of shul. And maybe before we just dive into this, I want to ask you, for you, what is the essence of shul? What is the essence of shul? We did a little bit like this in the sermon on Shabbat, but I want to focus a little bit more. What is the essence of shul? What is it to you?
It's a holy space, which it sort of has a certain feeling to it, where you feel you can communicate with Hashem or be close to Hashem, as well as all the other reasons, such as the community, etc. But it's I think it's a very special sort of space.
Okay, let me push you on that, Stephen. So we're talking about special space, holy space. Holy is a word that often I think it's a beautiful word, but for me it creates a barrier because I don't really know what it means. So and special also is a word of significance in the sense that this place is different. But in what way is it special, and in what way is it holy? How would you?
It's not just like walking into. I mean, it is a hall primarily, isn't it? It's a hall which has got an art and Torahs in it, but it's not like just walking into a hall. You walk into that space, and it does generate a spirituality around it. Or it does for me, anyway. And in fact, it's really weird because when you walk into it and when there's nobody there, even then it's still got a certain, it's still not just like walking into a hall. It's a lot different on a Shabbat or when you're there for a service or something. But yeah, it does radiate a sort of place where I feel comfort to communicate some of my thoughts. I could do it at home, I suppose, but it's, yeah, I suppose, yeah, you can. But I mean, yeah, it does help to have, I think the people are an integral part of that as well. But it's
So is it just a hall? Is it just a
no,
hall?
it's not just a hall. It's got something more within it. It has got
Okay.
something within it. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and if you were to try and feel out what that is,
Well, it is the presence of Hashem, as you said on Shabbat about Hashem dwelling within. That is how I feel there.
okay.
Yeah.
Very difficult. It's very difficult to think of it as a reproduction of the temple.
Go on, why is that?
But if the shul is designed to have like where the bimah is, it's like having an altar in the middle, and I guess people nowadays won't feel that comfortable about the thought of being in a temple because of all the sacrifices. So in a sense, maybe what we're aiming to get from a shul is different from what the children of Israel once when they visited the temple.
You're saying because there was about sacrifices, animal sacrifice, and we're not doing animal sacrifice at the moment, and so
No, we're
that
doing
makes
prayer. We're making contact we make contact through prayer, not through sacrifice.
right. And I mean, to be fair, also they made contact through prayer. Also, you know, a sacrifice isn't just a sacrifice. A sacrifice has aligned to it an experience of prayer. But I hear what you're saying, which is that there is no animal sacrifice, and we did deal with, I think, at length, but maybe not for a while, when we learned the book of Leviticus in a previous Chasing Lullabies series. So we did deal with sacrifices a bit more and trying to understand what they were and the different types of prayers that they represented. I can already see Suzanne getting a little bit anxious about the sacrificial messaging. So I am quite enjoying the screaming on that side. But it's interesting that I'm just going to just finish one point, which is that we know that nowadays we don't have sacrifices, but we do have our language, our prayers themselves, which we offer up, and there is this connection between the bimah that we that is representing the mizbeach, the altar, which is where they used to offer up their sacrifices, which was a vehicle to prayer, and we offer up our words, which is our vehicle to connection or prayer. So they're not a million miles apart, but we're not knee deep in animal blood. That's definitely true.
That's good.
Rena, what are you going to say?
I was going to say that's certainly part of what, I mean, it is a coming together. It's a togetherness. That's what shul is. I mean, it is, it's a house of, the actual translation, Knesset, it's a house of assembly. It's a place where people come together to pray. I mean, as Stephen said, you could pray at home, but that's not the same thing. It's being together. It's being with other people and in the right circumstances that elevates the prayer. That being together makes it much more powerful, if you like, and that's what a shul's for.
Right.
Together.
And I think that what you're picking out is that throughout the ages, language around shul, or what shul is, has developed. So when we think about what the wording is for a tabernacle or temple, those are the words that we might feel like in English use to describe either the tent, the roving tent, or the temple in Jerusalem. The Hebrew words for that already show a progression of idea or concept. The first word is mishkan, which mishkan comes from the word shachan, which means to rest. Shekhinah means God's presence. There is the mishkan, which is the place of God's resting, the place of God's presence. Then that transforms into mikdash, the sanctuary. And I suppose that's because the mishkan, which is the place of God's resting, but it's roving, now gets mikdash, now gets sanctified because there's an actual space which is holy. There's like this holy space. It's immovable. It's there. It's not roving. So it's not about the roving presence as much as, I mean, it is about that, but it's also now about the sanctuary, the holy space. So the language then that we also have of shul, of bet knesset, a house of gathering, synagogue, which is also about assembly, bet midrash, a place of learning. These are all sort of added dimensions to what shul could. I mean, shul itself means school, so you know the learning. So we have all these added dimensions of what it is for Jews to come together in spaces. But I think the initial language of shul following the destruction of the temple is mikdash ma'at, which is small sanctuary. So it's maintaining this idea, I'm now on a bit of a rant, it's maintaining this idea of God's presence. The heart of it, where it starts in the desert, where it continues into Jerusalem, splinters off into thousands of places around the world of little sanctuaries, it's about engaging with God. Now, by the way, how do Jews engage with God? Because they come together and they do it together. We do it with a minyan. We do it with a community. We do it as a group of people. So that's definitely the case. But it still seems that what we're trying to focus on is meaning it's not just the JCC. It's not just the Jewish Cultural Center where people come together to eat a bit of food and to enjoy each other's company. We do that in the context of prayer. We do that in the context of having an experience of prayer and learning. And therefore, it seems to be that there's the two parts, and it isn't one without the other. It's not just a place of prayer like you have these open shacks that you can go into. There's one actually near Botany Bay down the road from Barnet. It's called the Shack. It's an open church you can go into any time. It's not just a place of prayer for like individuals to go and call out to the Lord. It's about coming together as a group, calling out to the Lord. But it's not just about coming together as a group in the absence of prayer, because otherwise you could just have a community hall. Like that's the language that Stephen was using. So it seems to be a bit of both. I'm going to finish my rant. I wasn't arguing with you, Rena. I was just like processing it, and I tried to use the language of those different words to sort of give a bit more flavor.
One last thing there, Rabbi.
Sure.
I agree with everything that's been said so far on everybody's, sort of feelings and ideas and whatever. Nobody has mentioned the presence of the Ark and the Torah scrolls being there. And I think maybe I go to shul because that is what is there, and I can't see that at home.
Right. So there are appurtenances in the shul which are significant because they are unique to that place. I'm just going to move my chair because my battery's running out and there's no power cable over here right now. A relatively new office. So yeah, they're still working on it. So just give me a second to plug in. Anyway, so that's interesting. And I think that then we have to think about, why are those pieces there? Why do we have a Torah scroll? What is the significance of that? What does that represent? And I think that then we come into questions of those different parts. So we already mentioned that the bima might be corresponding to the altar. The Torah scrolls and the ark correspond to the ark back in the very first tabernacle and the temple. So already, again, we're sort of starting to feel something out here about what these different parts do. They don't just they give added dimension to this place because they are mirroring something of old, and they are offering new avenues of connection that you can't just do at home. For me, that's really interesting. Also, thinking about what COVID has done to us as a shul, is that COVID has made it has created quite unique experiences for many people where they decided to pray from home, maybe pray from home for the first time. And actually, it can be really nice to pray alone. It can be really a great headspace, not to have the intrusion of someone singing out of tune, another person having a conversation over there. You can just be in your own space and really communicate to God. And a lot of people have said, I don't want to come back to shul. I don't want to come back because I've had better quality prayer alone than I did when I was at shul. In actual fact, we used to discuss this in the last rabbinical school that I was in the Jerusalem Kollel, because a lot of people there really felt this quite keenly, that they really wanted to pray to God. And the best time they had praying to God was alone or on the side of a mountain or in a forest. and they would ask our rabbi, do we have to go to shul day in, day out, 3 times a day with a minyan, with a group of 10 people, because we quite like it, praying alone. I think he let them pray once a week without. But of course, you can always have a conversation with God, pray to God wherever you are, in your own language, without having to go through a formal prayer service. You can go and daven with a minyan and go and daven in the forest. There's no problem with that. But what you're saying, Francis, is that there's something special in shul, in the actual contents of the shul, that is unique. And actually, maybe it's about those contents that I want to focus on a little bit more. If there's anyone else that wants to add in a little bit now, please do go ahead. Michael.
I find it very comforting after a very busy week, basically. And I feel at one with God in shul, but yes, I also pray to God outside shul, at home or wherever I happen to be.
Right.
Especially if I have a near miss car accident, I say, oh, thank you, God.
Did you have a near miss car accident this week, Michael?
No, but I have in the past.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank God. I was getting worried about you.
Pardon?
I was getting worried about you.
Oh, no, not this week, thankfully.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is just draw the shape or the outline of the shul, the first ever shul, the Mishkan. And we're going to start to discuss the different parts. Okay, so does anyone know, if you're coming into the Mishkan, the tabernacle, what's the first thing that you would see if you were on your way in? As you're walking in from the entrance down here, let's say the entrance is down here.
Outside courtyard.
Yeah, and what's in the outside courtyard?
There's an altar there.
And what type of altar is there? Many points.
Made of copper, or
Yeah, copper altar. Very good. And what would they do on the copper altar?
What sort of sacrifices?
Yeah. Which sacrifices, do you know?
It's not the animal one, it's the other one. It's the
So it is animal sacrifices, and it's also meal.
Meal, that's what I was
meal sacrifices. So animal and meal sacrifices. Great. Okay, so that's the first thing that would happen on your way in. Whoops, don't want to do that. Is that you'd have the copper altar with the animal and meal sacrifices. I'll put the labels on the side so they're not in the way of the picture, but that's what we're going to have. So that's the outside, that's in the courtyard. You then walk through the courtyard, let's say into the tent itself. I'm going to draw this in like a light color just so that we see the sense of what's happening, but my focus isn't really on the fact that you've walked into the tent. Okay, so you walk into the tent, and then what's the next thing that you encounter as you walk into the tent? Anyone?
Is it the showbread?
Showbread, not yet. Showbread, I'll just put it for the sake of sort of posterity and getting it clear. I'll put the showbread further up. Let's do it in this color. Let's do a showbread. I think I always get confused with this one. I think it's on this side. Okay, so there's the showbread. So that's going to be on the shulchan, on the table. Okay, and so what is the showbread about? Why do we have a showbread? The showbread is actually called lechem hapanim. Lechem is called face bread. Lechem hapanim, it translates as face bread or showbread. So it's on show. That's why it's called showbread, because it's on show. And it sort of represents the material support that God gives. So on this side is the lechem hapanim, the showbread, and on the other side, so that's the material support that God gives. On the other side, just to sort of again round off the picture whilst we're here, because we've missed out one thing, but that's okay. We'll come back to it. On the other side is at the same level, basically, or as the showbread, is the menorah. Okay, so the menorah is the candelabra, and that is representing the light of the spirituality that God gives. So whilst the menorah is the spiritual light that is sustained by God, the showbread is the physical nourishment that is sustained by God. And those are at those two stages. But before you get there, on your way in, you have one other part, which is the golden altar. On the golden altar over here, that was meant to be gold. Let's try that again. On the golden altar over here in the middle, you've got, what do you offer up on the golden altar? Anybody?
Animals.
What's animals?
Pardon? There's no animals on the golden altar. There's actually no blood normally on the golden altar. It's all incense. So this is the incense altar, and the incense altar, they say that the smell of the temple would permeate the entirety of Jerusalem. It was this very intense smell, and it was very powerful, and that was sort of carried even the way down to Jericho or something like that. That was, they say, it was such a strong, beautiful, and intense smell. And that was the final thing. If you're going to consider that there's a partition over here, and there's going to be something beyond that partition. What's over here in that, beyond that partition? In the very
Ark.
The ark, that's right. And what's inside the ark?
The covenants. The stones.
The stones of the tablets of the covenant. That's right. And so we'll put the ark over here, and we'll do it in red, maybe, I don't know. So there's the ark of the covenant with the 2 tablets of stone given to Moses at Sinai. It's a big deal, and that's the ark of the covenant over there. And of course, if you are a raider of the lost ark, that's what you're going to be searching for. Okay, so there's the ark.
Be great to find them, wouldn't it, one day?
Pardon?
Be great to find them one day.
I know. Well, they're hidden away. That's what they say. Until the Messiah comes. Pardon?
They did in the film, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's right. I've never seen it. I always refer to it, but I've never seen it, actually. So my Harrison Ford is slightly lacking. Okay, so that's the layout of the temple. You'll notice that there are certain things we have in our shuls that are the same. So we've got our bima or our mizbeach. We've got our ark. We don't really have a menorah in shul, though, interestingly enough.
Barnet does.
Pardon?
Barnet does.
Barnet does. So on Hanukkah, we actually put the menorah on this side of the shul in lieu of the fact that it's remembering and commemorating the menorah of old. I don't think we have. Maybe we should put the Kiddush table on this side of the shul to to remember the lechem upon it, to remember the showbread. Okay, so that's sort of the layout. Now I wanted to start imagining with me something a bit interesting. What I want you to think about is, if you were to assign a body part that is most associated with the function of this item, so what body part would you most associate with it? And so let's start with the copper altar, which has upon it the animal and meal sacrifices for the delight and pleasure of Suzanne. So you have this copper altar, and they sprinkle the blood, and you burn the meal and burn the meat sometimes. What's the body part that's most associated with that?
The heart? No. Blood? No.
I'm not sure. The heart, it could be. Maybe think a little bit more viscerally.
It's the stomach, isn't it? It's food. It's
food. So food has to get somewhere before it goes to the stomach.
Mouth.
The mouth. Yeah, I think let's say the mouth. So let's have a little drawing over here, and let's draw in a mouth. Okay, so that's the mouth. Okay, that's a really poor drawing. I'm really sorry.
Just get your kids involved in this.
Yeah, so let's get the mouth. So that's the mouth. Okay, because your idea is that the altar consumes the sacrifices. In actual fact, there's lots of rabbinic literature which talks about this idea that the world is nourished through the consumption of the altar. So the altar sort of consumes the sacrifices, the fire consumes it, the blood is put there. It's like the consumption moment, so to speak. There's something eating. Okay, so that's the body part associated with the copper altar, the mouth. Now, what about the golden altar for incense? What might that be associated with?
nose.
Nose. You can see where this is going. Okay, so that's the nose, because in order to engage with the golden altar, you need to smell it. You need to smell the incense. Okay, the menorah shines its light into the world. What? Pardon?
Eyes.
It could be an eye. Okay, so there's an eye, because in order to see the light of the menorah, you have to be able to see. Okay, you have to be able to see. So that's how we see. We see with light, which is reflected upon surfaces, and then we're able to have vision. Okay, lechem hapanim, the showbread. The showbread. What body part would be associated with that?
The eye, because we're looking at it.
Excellent. So now, normally, you're Stephen. You're a whiz kid, Stephen.
I wouldn't have known unless I knew that it was a face.
You already said it. Okay, so Stephen, you're already suggesting that there is another eye there. Now, most people, when they see the bread, they're like, "Oh, it's another mouth," or something like that. But the point of the showbread is that it's on show, as we said. It's on show, and that's what happened, is that from week to week, the bread is there 7 days a week until the next Shabbat, when the bread is removed. It's still warm and fresh because it's showing that nourishment that God gives us, and then it's replaced with new bread to be on show. So it's our second eye. And then what body part would you associate with the ark?
Brain.
The brain. Okay. There's my squiggly brain. And that's the brain, because it's the control center. It's the identity of the whole thing. It's the focus. It's the control. It's the essence of what it all is. It's the head. It's the tip top. Okay, which leads us to the rather startling idea that the vessels within the tabernacle somehow give a metaphor of the face of God. So if we were to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of shul? What is shul meant to be offering us? It's meant to be offering us the experience of being in the presence of, speaking to, encountering the face of God.
Why is it the face of God? Why isn't it just a face, a human face?
Well, God doesn't really have a physical face, right? Now, why isn't it a human face? Or what would be the purpose of encountering face? Well, what would the face be if it wasn't somehow linking us into a concept of face of God?
Possibly looking at ourselves.
Oh, I like that. I like that. That's very psychological of you, Rena. Like, you hold up the mirror, And of course, prayer is lihit palel, reflexive, judge oneself, hold up the mirror. I like that. But then again, you're holding up the mirror to yourself. You are a shining soul. You're a little a piece of God from above. So there might be some little connection there. If you look into the deepest part of yourself, you find your divinity. You'll find your spark. So I just say that you hold the mirror up, but that doesn't mean that you're not also looking at something godly.
Does that mean that if you look very deeply into divinity, then you encounter yourself?
Ooh, my wife's flipped that on its head even further. Okay. That's actually too deep for my Monday evening, Shoshana, but I'm gonna think on that further. What do you think, Shoshana? Are you saying that just because it sounds good, or are you saying that because you think it?
Yeah, I'm saying it because if it's a reflection, then it's a reflection. That means both ways, doesn't it?
It's like the hall of mirrors, the endless reflections there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like that. Yeah.
Down the rabbit hole.
But can you just clarify who has access to which parts?
So you're right. So Jonathan's asking he's saying, well, come on, like, who actually gets to go in? Because in Rabbi Sachs' voice, the Holy of Holies is only accessed is the holiest place, which is accessed by the holiest man on the holiest day. It's only accessed by the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. So can we really say that a person coming to the temple is encountering the divine, or a face of the divine, or a reflection of the divine, or a reflection of themselves as a reflection of the divine? And my wife's really pulled that one out into a whole new level of thinking, of endless reflections of self and other, self and other, self and other. I've just been doing a whole load of group work today with people, and that's what group work is. Group work is seeing how others see you, and then how you seeing them, and it continues in sort of endless, increasingly deeper expressions of understanding. So if you put God in the picture, so you're seeing yourself reflected in God, and somehow God reflected in you, and vice versa. So yeah, it's a really deep thought. So who gets to go in though? But I suppose, Jonathan, you're right that it's only the high priest into the Holy of Holies. It's only priests into the sanctuary. It's only the Israelites are allowed into the courtyard, but not the full area of the courtyard. That might be something which we have to think about in terms of access. But if it's about the encounter, what the encounter represents, you come to the temple and you come to a building which is structured to make it representative of encountering God's face. How far you get to like walk into the face, that's a detail possibly, that it doesn't mean that you're not able. It doesn't mean you're not able to encounter face. It might mean you can't walk into certain areas. You're still coming into a space which represents encounter with face. So I suppose if we're going to dig into, say, Stephen's initial comment about what shul is for him, shul is a holy place, it's a special place, we might be saying shul is somehow, or tabernacle is somehow encountering the face of the divine. It's encountering an audience with God's face and all the different layers that we're starting to attach to that. Am I making this up, or is with this? This is a real one of my favorite pieces from Rabbi David Foreman. Is he making it up? It looks beautiful. It seems like it makes sense. Is there any language which is associated with tabernacle which also talks about face? And I'll give you a clue. There is a special blessing that emanates out from this tabernacle. It's a blessing which is in my bar mitzvah portion. It's a priestly blessing. We say it also to children traditionally on Friday night, or at times of bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah or brit milah or simchat bat. And we say this blessing also, according to Rashi, on the day that we inaugurate the tabernacle. What's that blessing?
May his face shine upon you.
Oh, beautiful. When I was growing up in Borehamwood and Elstree United Synagogue, so Rabbi Plancy was the rabbi at that time. And the way Rabbi Plancy, proper like old school United Synagogue rabbi, used to translate it, he would say as follows: Yevarecha Hashem yishmerecha. May the Lord bless you and guard you. Ya'er Hashem panav elecha v'chuneka. May the Lord shine his countenance towards you. Shine his countenance. I never knew what a countenance was, and be gracious to you. Yisa Hashem panav elecha. May God lift his countenance towards you. Yasem lecha shalom, and grant you peace. Now, countenance means face. So we're talking about God shining his face. That is the blessing of the priests that is said on the inauguration of the tabernacle. It's about God's shining face. That is the language that is chosen. It's a language of shining face. Out of interest, when does a face shine?
Moses' face shined when he was holy, after when he received
Right.
the
But
commandments.
if I was to ask you just more intuitively, Stephen, when does a face shine?
When it's happy.
Yeah, when it smiles. When it lights, that's when a face lights up, is when it smiles. So when we ask God to shine his face or to light his face towards us, we're asking to receive the smile of God. We actually daven for it every day. In the blessing of Sim Shalom, which is the finale of the Shacharit Amida, we say, Sim Shalom Tov Rachachem V'Chavrechem Aleinu V'Kizrem V'Barachenu V'Klankecha Ba'or Panecha. Bless us, Barachenu Avinu. Bless us, our Father. Kulanu Ke'echad. All of us together. Ba'or Panecha. With the light of your face, meaning with a smile, with the shine, with the smile of your face. We conclude our prayers, which we're offering up from our altar, our bima, our prayers, which are in replacement of the sacrifices. We conclude them by asking for God also to light his face towards us, to smile towards us. That's the finale of our prayer. So therefore there's something which seems to be written into the DNA of the prayers associated with tabernacle, with shul, that are about the face of God, the shining face of God. I want to share with you that for me this feels like one of the most powerful ideas. I think to me it strikes to the heart of what it is to come into the presence of something which is beyond, something which is greater, so much greater than me, and how I'd like to experience that being. For me, it's like a child. What is the greatest gift a child can receive from their parent? It's not money, it's not treats, it's not necessarily even a cuddle. I think one of the greatest things a child can receive from a parent is a smile. When a child looks up for approval and the parent looks down and smiles, it is, I think, one of the most fundamental human interactions. It's one of the most powerful interactions. And actually we're biologically hardwired for that connection. A child, when they're born, their visual acuity is absolute. That when they see, they're actually when a child is born, their ability to see is very, very poor. If you were to take a sight test of a newborn child, they would be legally blind based upon the amount that they can see. What are they tuned? They're tuned from the distance from breast to face, because when they're sitting there in their mother's arms, being fed by their parent, the thing that they need to see is their mother's face. Think about it. What if you were to sort of program a child? Would you probably program to see breast, but actually what they're programmed to see is face. Face is more important than breast. Now that's borne out by studies. For example, they're not very ethical studies, so Suzanne's not going to like that. But like, for example, Harry Harlow, who was a psychologist in the mid 20th century, so he did experiments on baby monkeys where he took baby monkeys away from their mother and he gave them two surrogate mothers. It was either a wire monkey. But the wire monkey, so it wasn't a monkey that provided warmth and nourishment, but it was a wire monkey that had a teat, so it could provide milk. And the other monkey was a warm, furry monkey, but it was barren. It didn't have any milk. And the baby monkeys clung to the soft, furry monkey, but leaned over to get food from the teat of the wire monkey. So if I can pull up a picture for you of that, I don't know if we've talked about this in the past, probably have, because it's one of my favorite sort of unethical experiments. Is
rather cruel.
Pardon?
Sounds cruel. It's being cruel.
I mean, it's horrendously cruel. It wouldn't pass an ethics board nowadays. But here you go. Here you can see Harry Harlow and his monkeys, and let's see if we can get there. There's the two different. There's the soft furry monkey who was warm, who the baby's sitting on, and the wire monkey who the baby doesn't want to go to, like dispositionally, but just needs the milk, so leans over to get the milk. So there you go. The baby clings to the. So even though the baby would eventually, if the experiment was taken to its fullest course, the baby would rather die of starvation whilst clinging to the warm monkey than stay with the wire monkey and not die of starvation, but not be given love. And so Harry Harlow tried to demonstrate that we are hardwired. We are a more fundamental need than food even is the need for love, is the need for care and affection. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that when we think about the fundamental needs of a baby when it's held by its mother, it needs to see its mother's face and the love and response and warmth and smile that the mother gives more than even the food that mother can provide. So if we as needy children come before our Maker, the thing that we need most in reassurance from our heavenly parent is the smile. And that's what it seems to be that the tabernacle is built and constructed to offer, as well as the blessings that the tabernacle is meant to emanate forth with, offering us the smile of our heavenly parent. We look up to God, we see, God, do you still accept me? Do you still love me? Do you still care for me? And we are met, hopefully, with a smile. Michael, you're going to say something?
Yeah. My mother always told me I should smile at other people, and it always does you good to smile. So I've always remembered that.
and smiles can change a person's biochemistry. So when we
Absolutely.
smile and do a full smile that meets our eyes, it's called a Duchenne smile. So it can transform our emotions to make us feel more happy. So there was an old question about theories of emotion. It's called the James Lange theory of emotion, where they asked Mr. James and Mr. Lange, do I smile because I'm happy, or am I happy because I smile? And so we dispositionally think that I smile because I'm happy, that my consciousness tells my body, so to speak, to smile, and that's why I smile. But actually, there's quite a lot of evidence to say that my body smiles, and then my consciousness reads that out, and that's why I'm happy. The truth is, it's a bit of both. That it's not exclusively one or the other, but rather it's a bit of both.
But there's a famous song, "Smile and the world smiles with you."
That's right. Smile if your heart is. Yeah. Anyway, there was a poem. Here was a poem.
Cry alone.
The smile, a poem by Spike Milligan. Smiling is infectious. You catch it like the flu. When someone smiled at me today, I started smiling too. I passed around the corner and someone saw my grin. When he smiled, I realized I'd passed it on to him. I thought about that smile, then I realized its worth. A single smile just like mine could travel round the earth. So if you feel a smile begin, don't leave it undetected. Let's start an epidemic quick and get the world infected. I'm not sure post-COVID that's a good.
That's very good.
But there we go. Okay, I want to share with you two ideas. One which is related to smiling, and one taking this appreciation of the tabernacle to a whole new level. The first thing is when Shoshana and I applied for the job at Barnet. So it was actually the Torah portion of the week was this Torah portion for our interview with the interview panel, I think, or it was around these weeks. And we mapped out with the people who were there acting out. So we got, like Ronnie was the ark and Simon was the menorah and someone else was this and someone else was that. And we set up the room to look like the different items in the tabernacle, and we discovered there was a face, and we shared the blessings of the tabernacle, which were face. And then what we did is we created a meditation. For me, this idea is so powerful, I want to do something with it. And the invitation for the meditation was to hold in your mind's eye a person who's got a special smile just for you. It could be a parent, it could be a sibling, it could be a child if one is blessed with a child, it could be a best friend, it could even be like a pet that has a special, so to speak, smile, like, a special smile. He's got a special smile just for you, that little dog of yours, So, and you hold that smile in your mind's eye, and you notice the thoughts that are associated with it, the feelings that are associated with it, and you sort of, and then you let go of that face, and you just have the emotions there, and you do it again with another person. So I might think of Shoshana, and then I might think of Yiska, and then I might think of Ezra, and then I might think of my mum, and then I think of my dad, and you move through these people with a special smile just for you. And you notice all the thoughts and feelings and body sensations associated with what it's like to receive the smile of someone who loves you. And then you take away then you put all the faces in your head, like all those people in one moment are just smiling at you. And then you take the faces away and you're just left with the emotion. And you know that God, when he smiles at you, it feels like all those smiles and more. And if you could imagine, if we could all come into shul feeling that sort of sense of presence, that sort of sense of being received, of being smiled at. What an amazing moment that could be for us to come together and feel like God's children being smiled at by our parent or our beloved or our sibling or our trusted friend. There would be what an experience that would feel like, walking into those spaces that we have, that space that we have. So we did that meditation with those people on the selection committee, and they seemed to like it enough to invite us to come and take the position at Barnet. I want to think finally about this tabernacle. So he said there is this sense of meeting the face of God, meeting the smile of God. There's another image in the tabernacle which is unique to the tabernacle. This image is only ever found in one other place in the whole Torah. It is a much, I think, misunderstood image. And I wonder if, if you're sort of feeling out what I'm feeling out here, an image that is present within the tabernacle, which is only ever found in one other place in the Torah, but seems to be very prevalent within the tabernacle itself. And I'll give you a clue. You find it, other than in the tabernacle, where you find it on the ark and you find it on the curtains.
Yeah, tell me.
Pardon, Jonathan?
But the lights.
Well, almost, but you find it also in the Garden of Eden after the fall, after the sin.
Oh, the cherubs,
the cherubs. That's right, the cherubs. Look, we're brought up in a Christian-dominated culture, so when we think of cherubs, all of a sudden we get naked babies with wings or something like that. But keruvim, cherubs, in Hebrew, keruvim, are a certain type of angel with these wings that covered, that they were hammered out of gold, and their wings covered the ark, and they were woven into the parochet, the curtain that made the barrier between the Holy of Holies and the rest of the tabernacle. And they were even woven into the roof, I think, of the tabernacle itself. There was this cherub imagery is everywhere, and the only other place we find it is a more sinister location, that after Adam and Eve have sinned in the garden and they're expelled from the garden, God appoints two cherubs to block the entranceway back into the garden, and they have a revolving sword which they use to block it. Now, if anyone's seen the Amazon series based on the Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett books, Bad Omens, so then you'll have this rather comical interpretation of the sword and the cherubs. But in our sort of imagery and mythos, then it's a much more intense image. It's these cherubs which are guarding the way back to paradise. But what I suppose it does is it tells us something, that there might be some link, some conceptual link between the Garden of Eden on the one hand and the tabernacle on the other. What might that connection be? What might be the connection between the Garden of Eden on the one hand and the tabernacle on the other?
Well, is that it? Like, say the Garden of Eden is like being in the tabernacle. And if you get expelled from the Garden of Eden, you're outside of the holiest place.
So there's something there. Go on, Rena.
God's presence.
God's presence. So God's presence is there in the Garden of Eden.
Mm.
And God's presence is there in the tabernacle. Who built what? Who built the Garden of Eden?
God.
Hashem created it, yeah.
And who built the tabernacle?
Yeah.
But he told us what to build.
Well, he told us what to build, but we built it. So God built the Garden of Eden for whom?
Man.
For us. Man builds the tabernacle for God. So now we're getting into some interesting ideas here. So God, why does God need to build a garden? Because God needs to give space. He needs to actually create space in order to allow there to be the space for man to exist. This is what the Kabbalists talk about when it comes to the concept of tzimtzum, that God contracted himself in order to make space a finite existence. But before we even have to get onto such lofty concepts of the incompatibility between finitude and infinity, on a very basic level, God creates a special place for man to exist. And I think for us, there's a certain connotation of garden. Garden is like this little oasis of nature, outside of the hustle and bustle of everything else. It's quite English, like the English country garden. I'm just thinking, the Rolf Harris song, wet underfoot and the leaves are filled with soot in the English country garden, newspapers torn and strewn across the lawn in the English country garden. But it's a very English thing to have your little plot of green. But it's an oasis, it's a space, it's a special space. So God creates a special space, a special garden for humanity to exist within. A unique little pocket, and in order for that pocket to work for man, God has to create all sorts of laws to allow man to exist comfortably within the garden. It can't be too hot, it can't be too cold, so it can't be too much gravity, there can't be too little gravity, there can't be too much rain, there can't be too little rain, there can't be too much sun, there can't be too little sun. He creates that sort of Goldilocks effect, which in terms of sort of physics and cosmology, the remarkable and unbelievable thing about the way that the universe exists is that the universe exists with such a fine interplay of all the different laws of nature that if even one of those constants, like Planck's constant or a different constant, was different, the whole of the universe wouldn't be able to continue to exist. It's a very, very fine-tuned machine. God creates the laws of nature, the laws of physics, in order to allow us to have our garden. So he respects, so to speak, the laws of the physical laws of the world, or the laws of finitude, in order to give us our garden. He makes an apartment, so to speak, within infinity. He makes a space within infinity to allow his beloved to have their space, that he can meet his beloved, his creations. We do the same thing. We have our space, our physical space, our encampment, our communities, and we contract, we make a space within that in order to have a special space that is now respecting God's laws, laws of purity and impurity, laws of holiness and something which is not holy, something which is profane. These laws are not natural laws for us. We live in a physical world. We don't live in God's world of purity and impurity, holiness and profane. And the one space that is most hypersensitive to those laws is the tabernacle, God's space. But we do what God did for us. We make space for him in our encampment. And so we're doing exactly what he did for us. He made a garden for us where he could be our parent and shine his face at us. We abrogated, we made a mistake, and that caused the cherubs to guard it and to kick us out. God gives us a new opportunity. If I can't make a space for you, you make a space for me. And now these cherubs are not going to have a sword anymore. These cherubs will mark the divide between one space and another. You go from outside to inside the tabernacle, there's cherubs on the roof. You go from inside the tabernacle to inside the Holy of Holies, there's cherubs on the curtain. You go from inside the Holy of Holies into the ark itself with the 2 tablets of stone, there's cherubs on top of the ark, but there's no sword. I'm now creating a new access point for you to re-engage with me. We're going to continue this discussion of cherubs next week. But for the moment, I think that there's something very powerful here. There is not only the idea that the shul or the mishkan, the tabernacle, is God's face, but in creating that face, we've actually somehow returned to a connection with God that was only present back in the times of the garden. He's giving us a way to walk with him once more. Thank you, everyone, for joining me this evening on Chasing Lullabies and chasing away the lullabies of what shul means. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on this section.
Thank you, Rabbi. Very good. Very good tonight. Really enjoyed it.
Very interesting. Very philosophical.
Very, very deep, I must say.
Yeah.
Very interesting, yes. And even I understood it.
And you still stayed with us despite the squirming, so we're very
I did disappear.
checking if Sooty was smiling still.
He's sloughing.
He's gone to sleep.
So he always smiles at Suzanne and Sheila.
He does, even when he's asleep.
He better do.
Be well, everyone. Good night. Lovely to see you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.